Okay, so I would like to welcome you guys to my 5 weeks to Freedom Masterclass. This is part of my Mind Fuel Academy and a part of my mission for this month, which was Mission Deadlock. So a lot of people had questions about where did you get Mission Deadlock from? And it has a lot to do with how our minds will keep us in a deadlock where we get stuck in a rut. So I want to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Payne, and I'm the owner of Rejuvenate Health and Wellness Centers. And I have tonight with me is Mr. Paul Kirch. So thank you, Paul, for being with me tonight.
Hey, it's my privilege.
Yeah.
And I love the fact you called me Mr.
And Mr. You get respect on here. Mr. Kirch has a wonderful resume of accomplishments. And just so you know who will be speaking tonight, I want to introduce you to some of the things that he has accomplished in the past, as well as what he does on a regular basis. So he is the president and CEO of Salience, a holistic digital marketing agency, and they specialize in customer experience optimization. He's also the CEO of Boss Academy. Boss Academy was part of the top 10 business podcast shows. It was called Boss Academy Radio, and this led to him founding Boss Academy. So with Boss Academy, this is a platform that he uses to give small business leaders and entrepreneurs the real boss, which stands for Business Ownership Success Strategies, which I love that. He's also a coach and a consultant, so that's why he's on here tonight. He also has a history with the world famous Gallup organization. He spent about 10 years, right, Paul, managing some of their high profile accounts. So you guys may have heard a little company called AT&T. If you've been around long enough, you've heard about TCI Cable. And of course, many of you on here right now have heard about Blue Cross Blue Shield. So those are some of the big companies that he has worked with. So before we get started, I want to converge some of this information that we've been talking about. And this is our second session of the masterclass. The first session, I talked about how our thinking creates our reality. And what I spoke of was that many times we have we have thoughts all day long, but a lot of those thoughts, we don't even examine them. And when those unexamined thoughts, they can go two ways. You can either create mansions with those thoughts, which my mentor likes to call, or you can create monsters. Now, if those thoughts lead to monsters, that's where you're going to get these ill feelings like the doubt, the worry, the discouragement, and the fear. And once those ill feelings kick in, that's when you're going to act accordingly. So we're going to talk about and back up a little bit on how these unexamined thoughts, how we get stuck in these thoughts, how we get stuck in the rut, and therefore we don't act. And so tonight we're going to talk about action over analysis. So those that are listening, feel free to comment, like, share, and if you have a question, go ahead and post it below the video in the comment section. All right, so Mr. Paul.
Yes.
So I noticed that this topic of action over analysis has become one of the main platforms that you talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So what I wanted to know was, what was it from your own personal experience and even your experience working with clients where this was such an important topic enough for you to teach this, discuss it, and come up with solutions for it?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to probably talk often from the perspective of an entrepreneur, small business owner, because that's a lot of the groups I work with. But at the same time, it applies really to everyone. But in my personal life, I faced a real personal challenge that derailed my business path, that derailed my personal path, kind of robbed me of a lot of confidence. And I was really facing a lot of doubt at the time. And I found myself being fearful of moving forward on things. And I always talk about this video that I saw because it's so relevant. But I'd seen it a few years before, and I remember it just happened to pop up in my YouTube feed again. And it was this woman who's probably in her early 60s, and she's running a marathon, and she gets about 100 yards from the finish line, and she falls down, and her ankle gives out, and she picks herself up, and she starts to take a couple steps, and she falls again. And people come out to try and pick her up, and she's waving them off, and she's waving them off, and she takes a few more steps and keeps falling, and finally she lets people help her up. But she takes a few steps, kind of collapses, picks herself up, and it's really tragic watching. But she eventually reached the finish line, and like she was just so broken at that point, but at the same time she was so proud of herself, and you could just tell that she was just like so happy she made it. And I always think about, if we're falling down forward, we can still reach the finish line, but it's when we stop moving that it's a problem. And at the time I had stopped moving. I was getting bogged down in my own thoughts and my doubts, and afraid to take action because I was like afraid of making mistakes. I was running two businesses at the time, and I was just so afraid of making mistakes that I wasn't taking any action forward. So I started realizing that the one thing I had to do was break myself free of that, and I had to start creating some wins. And so I started focusing on every day, just trying to make sure that I had something that I was accomplishing every day. And then I'd move to 3 of those, and I call them key goals. And it's like 1 to 3 key goals every day creates like such monumental success in your life, because every day you've got something that's moving you closer to the finish line. Because if you don't do that, it could be years of regret looking back saying, man, I should have taken some risks.
Right. And what have you seen this even in your clients?
Oh, yeah. With clients, especially, it's the word over analysis,
Mhm.
analysis paralysis. I mean, these are phrases that crop up a lot, but just being fearful of making mistakes holds so many people back. But I always think about my daughter. She's 10 years old now, and sometimes she's afraid of making mistakes, afraid of getting on a ride, afraid of doing something. And I say to her, I said, look, some of the greatest things in life come on the other side of fear. We were at a trampoline park, and they had this zip line thing. She wanted to do it so badly, and she wouldn't do it. She wouldn't do it. And she finally got up there, and then she couldn't do it. She stepped down. And eventually I kept saying, look, I said, just take one step off. And she did. And now whenever we go there, she wants to do that all the time. And it's her favorite thing to do, but she was held back from enjoying that. And I said, look, I said, that's the secret to life. Sometimes on the other side of fear is
Mm.
the most monumental things that you're going to accomplish, and the biggest memories and the greatest things. And that's true with a lot of my clients, that they're often reaching points where they're afraid of making a financial mistake, but often it's just because they're being held back by fear or self-doubt. And the old acronym, fear, false evidence appearing real.
Right.
Maybe you've heard of that, maybe you haven't. Maybe it's become a little cliche, but the reality is that's what it is. Often fear is this intangible thing that's not even real. It's
Right.
something we make up and we make bigger in our head.
Right. A lot of people, I think, have fear because, and you speak about this as well, sometimes they're not clear on what they're working towards too. So it's kind of like this foggy area that they're moving towards, but they're not sure where they're going. But I want to get into that in a second.
Mhm.
But you did say this quote, which relates to me a lot too, especially as an entrepreneur. But you said you don't see a lot of people thinking their way to success in their lives. And that was a powerful statement. And you also said that you see them taking action and getting things done, and it isn't always about brains, right? It's about movement.
Yeah.
But the
Well,
thing that stuck out was the people don't think their way to success.
I know that's obviously we have to think, and
Obviously,
and
right,
and it's obviously irrational to think that we don't have some times in our lives where it's like we're taking a big risk and we have to really weigh the odds.
right,
But you cannot think yourself to a successful outcome without finding a way of taking action.
right.
So, that's eventually you got to get to that point where you're taking action.
Mhm. Why do you think, and based on your experience, why do you think what causes people to have the analysis paralysis besides fear? Because fear is number one, I think.
I think fear is probably the biggest driver of it. And I also think that we kind of we live in a little bit of an ADHD society in terms of the way we all live today. Not everybody's online, not everybody is using social media the way that many of us do, but micro content in terms of short videos have become prevalent through TikTok and Snapchat and even on YouTube now. And we find ourselves going from one thing to another, to another, to another.
Mhm.
And often we think, okay, well, I'm only going to spend a minute on this video. Well, 10 videos later, that's 10 minutes. And then 20 minutes later, you still haven't got anything accomplished. So often we're pulled in other directions. So fear is the biggest thing. But I think the other thing is that we often are not prioritizing those things in our life that really matter the way we should. I've been guilty of it. I think we all have.
Yes.
You're trying to build a business and the business is important to you, but guess what? That nap's also important. That golf game's important.
Right.
What's really the priority? In the moment you go, well, it's just one nap, but that one nap may have been the difference between you moving forward that day versus not.
Mhm. A lot of things that I see, and as I get deeper into this work of really getting into mindset, what I am able to identify better now, especially in my patients, and I try to I encourage them, right?
Yes.
But a lot of people are afraid to move forward. And tell me what you think about this. They don't trust themselves because maybe something in the past caused
Yeah.
them to where they're like, I've done that before, that's not going to work. Even with health, I've tried to lose weight before, but that's not going to help. Or I'm going to see something real tasty on TV and then I'm going to order it and I'm going to fall off of the wagon, right? So, what do you think about, with your experience, trusting people having issues trusting just themselves?
Oh, absolutely. So there's a psychologist in the UK that I'm a big fan of. I met her through a TED Talk. She'd done a TED Talk, and I was so impressed with her message. At the time, I was running Boss Academy, and it was a top 10 business podcast show. And I reached out and said, "Look, I'd love to interview you." And she was very open to it, and I was super excited to get her on. And her big philosophy in life is she teaches people that you're enough. Sometimes we don't think we're enough. We don't belong here. We don't deserve to be here. We don't deserve to be wearing this entrepreneurial hat. We don't deserve to be a mom. Whatever it ends up being, sometimes we don't feel like we're significant enough. And it's such baloney most of the time. Now, one of the things I want to share a quick little exercise. And I've talked to you about this before. It's one of my favorite examples, though, of our minds are really powerful tools. And everyone talks about how powerful the brain is. But at the same time, there's a reason that sleight of hand works. There's a reason that we're easily manipulated. So if you actually pretend that you have a lemon in your hand, I want you to do this along with me. Just hold out your hand, pretend you have a lemon. You see that lemon? Can you see the lemon?
Yes.
Is that lemon cut in half? You can see the inside of the lemon.
Hmm.
Now I want you to look at that lemon. It's yellow on the outside and kind of turn around. Now
Right.
bring that lemon up to your nose and just
Right.
smell it. Can you smell that lemon?
Right. Yes.
Now take a bite of it. What happens? Does your
It's
mouth
sour.
water?
Yes, it does.
Does your mouth, my jaw tightens, my mouth
Right.
waters?
Like you feel it here.
That lemon doesn't exist,
Right.
but our brain says, hey, they say it's a lemon. I know what a lemon looks like. So often we're held back because we create these ideas in our head that are just not real. We see ourselves failing. We see ourselves, not fitting in. We see ourselves being the butt of the joke when often that's not really what's happening. That's not the reality. And those are the things that sometimes keep us from moving forward because we're afraid of looking like a failure.
Right.
So
I love that exercise. That was cool.
yeah, me too.
So that kind of reminds me too, even just, and you've probably gone through this too, as I was creating the Mindfield Academy, the reason for it is because I want to educate. I like teaching. So
Yeah.
educating people and fueling their minds so they can make better decisions about their health. I have been putting that off for 2 or 3 years because, oh, I was too busy, or so time was an issue, um, or nobody's going to listen. You think of these things, or who am I to be teaching these things? And those self-sabotaging thoughts come in your head. But like you said, your thoughts create your reality, and that reality probably doesn't exist. But then when you realize, like in my case, that it's about, like I told Nicole, I think she's watching right now. Today, I told her, I said, it's not about me, it's about getting the message out. So I kind of want to move into with you about your why and being clear. So, how does that play a part into kind of getting through and a paralysis that you might have in your thoughts?
Yeah, before we go there, you
Sure.
touched on something that's huge, and that's that idea that you held off on creating this. And there's a Jim Rohn had created this simple little rule called the Law of Diminishing Intent, and it's really simple in its foundation, but it's really complex and really says a lot about human beings. But it's basically the law just states that the longer we wait to take action on an idea we think is a good idea, the less likely we are to move forward with that idea. Real
Right.
simple. But think about in your life, how many times have you had an idea? I mean, I've had $1 million ideas, I've had $1 billion ideas,
Mhm.
and they're like foolproof. This is the greatest thing, but I don't take action on it. I don't really do anything with it. And then a few days later, I circle back, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh man, that was a dumb idea. Nobody's going to buy that. It's like,
Right.
because all of a sudden we start to convince ourselves that that is not something that would ever work. And the reason we do that is because our human brain is there to protect us.
Right.
The fight or flight mindset that used to matter so much during the caveman days, it still applies because we are constantly putting ourselves in a position where we want to avoid pain. And because you didn't take action, because you didn't move forward, now all of a sudden that same idea is no longer a good idea. When in reality, if you'd have taken action on it,
Yeah.
chances are you'd have moved it forward.
Right.
Tony Robbins always talks about taking massive and immediate action on anything we want to accomplish, because if we don't, that's exactly what happens. We start to talk ourselves out of it. So this all ties to having something bigger that drives us than just an idea. So, you had this idea, it's a good idea, you can impact a lot of lives, but you were fearful of people not taking it seriously. It was going to be a distraction from other things you wanted to do, whatever it ends up being. So if there's something you really want to accomplish in your life, whether it be business, whether it be personal, you better have something that drives you beyond money, because money is not a motivator that you want, because when money doesn't come in, you're no longer going to be motivated, or you're going to
Right.
be really upset.
Right.
So finding a why, finding something that makes you get out of bed excited about what you do. Now, for me, Boss Academy, if I can share this story real quick, was a top 10 business podcast show back in 2017. The show started as a live radio show in Dallas in 2014. I got on 2 top 10 lists back in 2017. Was having a lot of success with the show, but it was also going through problems in my personal life. I was going through challenges in my marriage, and I could not keep everything going. So I said, look, I got to put something on hold. My primary business, I couldn't put that on hold. So I put Boss Academy on hold. And I let that idea die for 4 years, almost 5. And then last year I was talking to a coach of mine, and I said, look, this is something that always drove me. And he goes, talk about that. He goes, what motivated you about it? I said, I've always felt that I've been so blessed to become a small business owner, because I didn't never think I could do it, that I wanted to give back. I wanted to help others. I wanted to help others on that journey. And I said, it's like, it's something that drives me. And we started diving in more. And it's like, my why really was around helping others avoid the pain that I had felt as somebody that thought he was never worthy of owning his own business, or that felt the pain of struggling when things weren't going well. And I wanted to help others avoid that. And so that's one thing that allowed me to not only bring Boss Academy back, but bring it back in the form that I wanted it to be, which is a community to help entrepreneurs achieve success through business ownership success strategies. And I share all that because if you want to accomplish something in your life and you don't have a strong why behind it,
Yes.
when things get hard, you're not going to stick to it. And it's important to have a why, but it's also important to always be reevaluating that why and making sure that it's something that continues to drive you. And if you're not emotionally connected with it, find a way of getting yourself emotionally connected with it, or find a better why.
Right. I know for me, what I keep on my desk, my mom, she stays
That's
there.
awesome.
So, I mean, any second where, you do go through moments where you just, why
Yeah,
am I doing this again? And then, I look over, I'm like, all right, that's why.
that's
So,
right
yeah.
next to my picture. Is that right?
I don't have a frame for that yet.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, you have dart holes in it, I know, but
That's on the wall.
yeah, exactly. No, I think that, and so talk about that. What about your mother
Yes.
inspires you to do this?
I mean, well, first of all, she was during the time when she was so sick. Um, Doctors didn't do a good job, I felt, in explaining how to stay healthy, how to get healthy. So when they gave a diagnosis, it's like, hey, you have diabetes. Okay, now go get healthy. It's like, what? Eat right. You're like, well, what does that mean? And so for people to be lost, I want to give an answer, right? I want to be a leader and guide them because they're looking for guidance. And that's lost. That's the lost art among physicians.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm stepping forward and taking the task. So
Well, let's go a little
that's
deeper
how
though. So that's amazing. But what about that really emotionally connects to you? Was there pain associated with your mom's
yeah.
struggles? Was there,
Oh gosh, yes.
and is your motivation to help others avoid that, or what
Yes.
is it?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes,
So
it
this is
is.
what I'm talking about. This is what the process of finding your why is. So I have been very laxed on it because I feel like I'm on a good path, but I used to, on my whiteboard, I would write down my why that I was
Right.
currently focused on. Then I'd write down what emotionally connected me to that. And I would do this daily. And if I found myself getting really apathetic about it or kind of like, well, it was time to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to stay tied to that.
Mm,
And keeping that picture that you have, and I would say that as long as you always remember what really inspires you about your mother and her struggles and how you can help others. I mean, that's the kind of thing that keeps you moving when things
right.
are not easy.
Right. And when things don't seem the highest, right?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So going back to being clear, okay, and clarity and having a vision. I do encourage people when I do consults, I encourage them to, and I ask them, what does your vision of your health look like? And a lot of times I get a look out of the window like I didn't think of that. I just came in here because my neck hurt, right? And so after digging deeper, you can really get to the bottom of things that they need to work on, but they didn't know they had a vision for them for their health for themselves. So as far as getting clarity, how important is that as far as making these moves and taking action and staying motivated and having that momentum?
Clarity is a beautiful thing, but I will tell you that clarity also can be a very crippling thing if you use that as a crutch to not move forward. So
Mhm.
I would rather see somebody have an idea where they want to go, start moving there, and then focus on really getting clear, really driving that direction and getting super focused on it as they're going.
Mm,
But if you sit there and wait until you've got clarity on everything in your life before you take action, you're not going to accomplish much because most people will never do it. Now, having somebody like you that pushes them to focus on clarity, that in itself is a form of action because you're working with a coach, you're working with somebody who, you're an amazing doctor, and you've done so much for me and my family. And the one thing you said, you're an encourager, and that's 100% true. But that encouragement also can be something that keeps somebody moving forward because it's like, now, you don't want to just disappoint yourself. You don't want to disappoint your doctor, but also you asking them what makes you what do you want for your health? That in itself, like I said, is a form of action because they've come to you and they're taking that step.
Right.
So that I don't see that as a form of procrastination or avoidance. But at the end of the day, if you tell me what's more important, sitting there getting 100% clear or moving forward, move forward.
Right. Sometimes the clarity doesn't come until you move. Yes.
And the clarity changes, right? Because what
Yes,
you're
it
clear
does
on
change.
today.
Yes.
Yeah. So Steve Harvey, Family Feud, Steve Harvey show. Actually I think he got a couple of daytime Emmys recently, and he's a very funny comedian, but it's interesting. Here he is in his 60s, and I think, or actually he's just about to turn 60. I don't remember what his age is, but I know he's close to that age range. He's on a major fitness path. He's trying to lose weight, and his goal is to see a six-pack ab on his body one more time before he gets older and doesn't feel like he can do it. So he's convinced that this year he's going to be able to achieve that and reach that goal. His goal did not start there. His goal started with losing weight and getting in better shape. But the more he moved forward, the more he started to see what was possible. So, like I said, that clarity for him changed.
Right. Okay, cool. What about visualizing? What are your thoughts on visualization?
Like I said, that lemon's a perfect example. If that doesn't give you a great example of what visualization can do,
Right.
I have a vision board that I had on my office wall for several years. I eventually took it down, but interestingly enough, the car I drive today is the exact same car I had on that vision board, and I didn't realize it until after I was ready to purchase that car. One day I'm driving by this dealership and I see this car and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love that car so much. And so I'm moving forward, I'm buying the car, and I'm talking to my girlfriend, and I said, I think that's the same car I had on my vision board. So I went and found a picture of the vision board, and sure enough, in the middle is this car. The symbol is the same, the year, the make, the model, the color, everything was the same. And I didn't even put two and two together. And that's something that I visualized, I saw having in my life, and eventually it became reality. I'm not saying you can manifest everything you want, but manifestation can happen if we see ourselves achieving things, see ourselves a certain way, and take action towards it. That's the missing piece that a lot of people don't. There was a book and a movie called The Secret. The Secret really talked about being able to see ourselves having what we want, but it missed the piece about we have to work for it. We have to take action to get there. But that is something that I 100% believe in, that you can see yourself in a good light, but you can also see yourself in a bad light. You can see yourself failing. You can see yourself going broke. You can see yourself homeless. And next thing you know, you're having struggles in your life that you never meant to. So that's why we always need to be focusing on trying to stay positive, trying to stay focused on something that moves us in the right direction.
I like your practical way of looking at things from all sides, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, I like that. So if you could summarize or give some tips or the highlights of ways to avoid analysis paralysis, what would you say about that?
Well, actually, one of my favorites is a military term from the Air Force. There was I think it was it was in the 40s. I don't remember what time frame, but there was a Colonel John Boyd was an Air Force colonel, and he was, they called him 42nd Boyd, and he took down an enemy combatant in 40 seconds. And he came up with this strategy that later became in the military known as OODA loop. And OODA stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. Now, even though we're not flying jet fighters in most of our daily lives to accomplish what we need to do, we need to do those same things and put them into action. So, if we're observing, we look at the situation, we look at what we want to accomplish, and we want to look at, where are we going? But then we orient in terms of what do we need? What kind of resources? Who do I need to connect with? What else do I need to do to make this a reality? And then just take a decision on this and say, you know what, I'm doing this. Like you with your program. How many years did you say you waited?
Almost 3.
Okay, you waited 3 years, which sounds like a lot. But when did this really happen? The minute you made the decision.
Mhm.
Before that, the 3 years doesn't really matter. It's
Right.
only when you decided to take action from that point forward, that's when became reality. And then the last step is take action. And I bring up UDA because it's a simple acronym that we can use to just remember: observe, orient, decide, and act. But it all comes down to that last piece. Move forward, take action, take some risks. You know, it's okay to be afraid to fail, but you will definitely fail if you don't move forward.
I like.
And
Thank-
I often say that, um, we talked about thinking your way to success, and it's
Mhm.
like, um, action takers do, thinkers do not. And
Mhm.
that's another thing I try and remember, that it's okay to think, it's okay to decide on things by kind of analyzing it.
Right.
But that analysis in itself can be action. But if you're just sitting around thinking about it and procrastinating and doubting yourself and questioning why you should do it, that's not taking action.
Right. Thank you so much.
Of
I
course.
really enjoyed talking to you. I pick at you, but you are full of knowledge.
Thank you. Well, you're my
Full of
favorite
knowledge.
chiropractor.
So,
Can I tell them what I call you? No, I better not do that. I'll be nice. I'll be nice.
so if someone wanted to get in contact with you, if they own a business and
Yeah.
they're looking for a business coach, um, I guess who are you looking for as far as a client? Like who would be the perfect client for you? And
Yeah.
how would they get in contact with you?
Well, I think the easiest way is to come out to bossacademy.com.
Okay.
And that's a great starting point. At Boss Academy, we're focused on real business ownership success strategies. And we do that through networking masterminds. We've got some amazing programs. In fact, right now, if somebody were to come out to Boss Academy, we've got a really great deal for them to join, and they can join a mastermind for free. They get a $2,000 workshop just for joining. And I think that's probably the best place. And in
Okay.
terms of who, those are all smaller business owners. A lot of times they're people that define themselves as an entrepreneur. They define themselves as a coach, a consultant, but it's really anybody who's wanting to get away from some of the struggles that small business owners face. Like, a lot of us work from home. So isolation, self-doubt, facing all those challenges of, figuring out how we're going to get ahead. So Boss Academy is a place where they can help keep the dream alive and get a lot of support. Now, if
Okay.
they're looking for digital marketing support, they can contact me directly at paul@paulkirch.com. That's probably just the easiest way.
Okay. Okay. And I will post that for everyone as well. All right, Paul. Well, thank you so much for being on this interview with me. This has definitely been a masterclass. I was here taking notes. So so I'm going to go back and read some of these notes and check out some of the things that you mentioned, some of the concepts you mentioned, and I'll post those as well too, just in case someone missed those.
Awesome.
Our next session will be this Monday, so April the 4th. It'll also be at 6:30. We're going to continue to talk about different survival constraints that keep us from moving forward, like perfectionism, procrastination. We're also going to talk about what we perceive as overwhelm. So we'll be digging deeper into that on Monday. Go to rhwcenter.com to register, or you can send me a message on my Facebook page. Thank you again, sir, so much for all of your knowledge. I always have a good time with you, and I can't wait to pick at you again when you come in to the clinic.
You're welcome. I didn't give you all of it today. I gave you most of it. So there's still a
You
little
did,
left
you
over.
got some of that back today, but
Yeah,
you're one of my
exactly.
favorite people. So thank you so much for your
You
support.
too. Thank you, Dr. Payne.
All right, you guys have a good night.